Amy Godine's new book, The Black Woods, chronicles the history of black pioneers who from the late 1840s into the 1860s migrated to the Adirondacks to farm and to vote. Under New York's Constitution from 1821 to 1870, black men were only allowed to vote if they had $250 worth of property. And so abolitionist Gerrit Smith gave 3,000 black New Yorkers 120,000 acres of land in the hopes that it would give them the right to vote. Amy, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So who was Gerrit Smith?
Oh, he was the son of a renowned land speculator, Peter Smith from Peterborough, New York in Madison County, who amassed a great amount of land, much of it in northern New York, some of it in the Hudson Valley too. And Gerrit Smith inherited a piece of this and also inherited a talent for speculation himself and amassed more. And eventually decided to part with some of it because he was tired of having to pay taxes on land he couldn't sell and didn't use. And at a certain point he decided maybe it's time to give away land I don't need and other people do. So he was a philanthropist, he was an avid abolitionist. He worked closely with black reformers in New York State and all over the North, really. And he's just a singular guy. He had many interests, but social reform was at the top.
Was his hope that giving the black settlers the land would give them the right to vote?
It's a double hope. That's one hope, and it doesn't give it to them outright. They have to increase the value of the land, which is roughly $50 a gift lot, to $250 by working it and improving it. So it's not an immediate vote, but the idea is that with this work, with this sweat equity, the land will increase in value and gain you the right to vote.
And for the black settlers who did come up here, it worked?
It worked, yes. The black settlers who do come up show up on town rolls of voters within a few years, which is pretty gratifying to discover.
3,000 was the goal.
Yeah.
In reality, most didn't end up coming to.
I think most is a very polite way to put it. I think almost all didn't come. Garrett Smith believed, and he was sad about this, that only 50 of his deed holders actually claimed their land. In fact, I find about 250 people do move to this territory in that wider stretch of time from 1846 to about 1865 or so. It doesn't come close to 3,000, and if you want to judge it in those terms, it's an absolute failure. I don't, however.
Gerrit Smith was disappointed.
Yes.
Historians backed him up. Generations of historians basically wrote that it was a failure.
Well, worse than that, they wrote that it was a failure because the black recipients of land lacked the capacity to farm, that this was not in the nature of the black recipient, that it was characterized, it was doomed to failure because they were unworthy of this. They lacked the grit, they lacked the resolution, they lacked the imagination. What they lacked was money. What they lacked was capitalization at the outset, and that wasn't their fault. That was Smith's oversight, not to anticipate that.
In the book, you argue that point, that they simply didn't have enough money to come up here to set up a farm.
No, they didn't, and Frederick Douglass, who initially is a great supporter of this initiative, recognizes this problem early on. After just a few years, he says, they can't buy tools, they don't have livestock, they can't progress without money. And without money, this thing is going to fail very fast. I find other instances that weren't noted in the record of significant support for the grantees, of white people who back their claims against tax seizures when those come up with the county or the state, who back their claims for pension justice when those appeals are filed with the Pension Bureau, and that raises considerable support in local communities, of white people working with and for black people and vice versa along the way. But this evidence is really secreted in archival files, which is kind of hard to find, and if you don't dig super deep underneath the antiquarian histories, you aren't going to find it.
And the wealth of information you found, because of that, you tell a different story.
I do, or I try. I don't want to gild it as a more happy utopian outcome. It wasn't. It's a very mixed bag. It's a much better, exciting story though than I think it's been credited for over the years. However, it's not a story of Black incompetence and Black incapacity. It's a story of resilience and agency. And over and again, I find stories of grantees who came up with lifestyles and ways of surviving that worked on the Adirondack frontier.
Our conversation with Amy continues online, where she talks about how Gerrit Smith's land gift helped Lafayette Mason earn enough as a farmer and landowner to qualify to vote. Amy also talks about the growing movement within the past few years to recognize the Black settlements in the Adirondacks. That story is part of a new documentary airing this summer on Mountain Lake PBS called Adirondacks for All. You can watch it. It's coming up next, right after Mountain Lake Journal. Also online and on our YouTube channel, you can watch Amy's talk about her book from this past week, held at the Peru Community Church. And look for upcoming talks and book signings that Amy is hosting. You'll find a list on our website.